Welcome to our monthly webinar with Dr. P, affectionately known as Dr. P, Dr. John Porman, holistic healer, holistic health provider, doctor of chiropractic. I'm always learning. I always learn something new every meeting I have with him. So without any ado, I think we're talking about how to bring joy back to Christmas. So what do you say you, Dr. P?
Thank you. So let's just put it this way. The holidays shouldn't be something that we have to survive. They should be something that we actually get to enjoy and that we thrive during the holidays. And not many of us get a chance to do that. So welcome to the Legendary Healing Foundation's monthly webinar. The premise of this one is going to be about just the holidays and the source of stress that we all can go through, but it should be a time of joy. So a couple things we're going to talk about is, setting expectations. So just simple, practical tools to help reclaim your peace. Some of it's going to be physical, some of it's going to be mental and emotional. It's not about perfection. It's about creating, sustainable routines that can actually work on a day-to-day basis. And that's really what we're all about. And every time we get together and we talk. So, the holiday is stressful for most people. It's like an epidemic or even a pandemic, because we've turned it into something that was supposed to be about connection, and it's more like it's a performance. There's financial pressures, there's family dynamics, there's unrealistic expectations that some of us have, or a lot of us have, and the nervous system can go into that fight or flight sympathetic overdrive. And, it's not that we're failing during the holidays, it's kind of that the system is broken because that's just kind of the way people expect it to be. So we kind of need to reset our expectations for ourselves and for others. And so the physiological reality to all that is that, your prefrontal cortex is going to go offline, which kind of decreases your rational thinking. Your amygdala, which is your fear center, becomes very hyperactive or increased in activity more than it should be. Your sleep's going to get disturbed, which is not good. Just being somewhere else for the holidays or having someone in your house, we all know that can disrupt your sleep, which then compounds everything. So you end up in this cycle of stress, poor sleep, more stress, and then worse decisions, and then it kind of just keeps going. So here's the thing, though. It's not about not having stress at all. It's because the only way to have no stress is to be dead. So what it's really about is learning to set yourself up to be able to handle more stress. Because I tell my patients all the time in here is it's not about emptying the bucket. It's about getting a bigger bucket so you can handle more stress. Because the more stress I have, which there's eustress, which is good, and there's distress, which is bad, the more stress I can handle, the more I can actually thrive and enjoy life. So, the one thing like during the holidays is sleep. And so we're going to talk about sleep because that's going to be the foundation for me, because that's going to help with emotional regulation, immune function, my thought processes, all that kind of thing. And, research shows if I have one bad night of sleep, it can affect me up to 4 and 5 days. Now, you might not feel it if you're an athlete. You might not feel it the first day that you compete or that you go through practice, but you're going to start to feel it after that. But it will affect you for the next 4 to 5 days. And you can see that on something like an Oura ring. You can see that on something like any wearable that measures your sleep. You're going to see that. So the problem is people want to sacrifice sleep. That's the first thing they want to do is sacrifice sleep during the holidays. And that's, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, that's the biggest mistake that they make. So what are some things they can do? Some practical sleep like tips or protocols. And some of them would be like, just protect your bedtime. Make it like it's a workout appointment or it's a work appointment that you can't miss it. You have to be there and you have to be there on time. So go to bed every night at the same time. It doesn't matter where you're at, even during parties, within an hour. If you can get that same sleep time within an hour, you're going to see on your wearable, whether it be a Whoop or an Oura ring or Apple Watch, you're going to see that your REM and your deep sleep actually will improve just by getting to bed at the same time and getting up at the same time. So you don't want to really shift that. The other one we talked about in the past is, 72 degrees or cooler in your room. Another one would be complete darkness, where you have blackout curtains or you have an eye mask. Another one would be where we have a sleep routine, and that's about, a 15-minute thing. Could be as little as 5 minutes, whatever you want it to be. But, we talked about the physiological size, so that's 2 breaths in and a long exhale. So think of it like it's equivalent to when someone's crying, a little kid's crying or an adult's crying, and they try to catch their breath. It actually is what's called a physiological sigh in in biological terms, and it actually drops us down into a more parasympathetic state. So it takes us from that high beta arousal and drops us down into a more alpha state, which is really good for the brain and really good for us to relax, to get down into that feeling rest, or feeling safe that I can rest. Another one would be that I would give, 3, 5, 10, whatever it is you want to give, but gratitude or things that transpired that day. Again, it could be big things, it could be small things. You could make it a lot of things. You could make it 2 things. Doesn't really matter, but just give gratitude. That works wonders for your neurological system. The other one that I add to that is I give gratitude for the things I want to transpire the next day. That might be, 3 great new patients that call me to get in to see me, that really appreciate my work, that are willing to pay me, that blah, blah, right? You make it as detailed as you want, but you want to give gratitude for something you'd love to transpire the next day. Then let's talk about some things to avoid. Obviously, I've talked about all this stuff in the past too, but screen time, 60 minutes before bed. If I'm going to be in front of a TV or a computer or my phone, I want to turn on either have red light glasses, or I want to have blue blockers, or I want to use the red function on my computer or my screen to block out the blue light, because that just wakes up the brain, the nervous system. Alcohol, we know alcohol, and I've proven this over and over and over again with many athletes. One alcoholic drink, people go, but I sleep better. No, you don't. And actually research proves that you're more relaxed. I'm not saying you're not more relaxed, because you are, but you don't drop down into deep sleep. You don't get as much REM sleep. You don't get as much deep sleep. You're more in this shallow area of sleep, not dropping way down in. And then another one would be caffeine. People are all different, but I would say in general, anywhere between noon and 4 o'clock, I'd stop drinking coffee. So the average is about 2 o'clock for most people. Unless you're a really high methylator, where you can methylate the coffee and get out of your system fast, it's gonna keep you up, and it's gonna rev you up, and that's not gonna be a good thing. The other one would be that we talked about is 3 hours of no food in your stomach for 3 hours when you go to sleep. So if I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock, I stop eating at 7. For some people, that might be a problem, but that's works really well. You could maybe drop down to 2, but I wouldn't go lower than 2. Research shows 2 to 3 hours is going to be best for sleep. And then,
How does water,
Yeah.
can you kind of, as you're transitioning the whole food thing, I found that drinking a little bit more water in the evening would fill my stomach up more, so that I wouldn't feel like I'm going to bed hungry, which I was like, I can't do that. So like, how do you transition to like not eating after 7, those kind of rules? Like, I just started drinking water. Are there any other tips?
Fiber with the water, because that'll expand when it's in your stomach, and that'll help. The other one's going to be, like I tell everybody, everything starts in the brain. Everything starts with a thought. So if my thing is, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it through the night, well, you're probably not going to make it through the night. If your thing is, gosh, I'm going to wake up and feel whatever, you're probably going to wake up and feel whatever. So that's one. 2 is you got to make sure that when you're drinking the water, you're not drinking so much that it is going to wake you up and have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, because that disrupts our sleep too. And that's a big one for people, whether it be males with a benign prostate hypertrophy, or women have teeny weeny bladders when they're pregnant or whatever. You want to make sure you get good sleep, because that's just super important. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yep. And then let's talk about morning. So we've talked about this in the past, so let's go over this. You need a routine in the morning, and we all have one. It might not be the greatest routine, but we all have routines. So why not start with something like cold exposure, where you're doing anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes. If you're doing a cold plunge, you could just get in for 30 seconds, or you literally could get in the shower for 3 minutes. The shower doesn't have to be freezing cold. It can just be as cold as you can get it to go at that time of the year. Because it activates your nervous system to wake you up and get you going in the day, because it actually makes you produce a little bit of adrenaline and cortisol. So that's a good thing. Sunlight for 5 or 10 minutes. Again, if you can only do 2 minutes, do 2 minutes, but anything's better than anything, than nothing. I get outside, the first 30 minutes of sunlight. It's harder now because the sun comes up later. I know that. And so people are like, hey, I'm already at work. I get it. Then maybe you just take a break and you sit out in the sun for 5 minutes. You get to work, you've already started, and you start at 6, let's say. Sun doesn't come up until 8 your time. Then you go out and you sit in the sun for 5 minutes. That would be great, because that, even though you've been awake, it helps build circadian rhythms. Even through the clouds, you want to make sure that you are out in the sunlight. It works really well with that, because again, circadian rhythms. People talk about sunglasses, or do we have to look in the sun? No, you don't have to look at the sun. It's indirect light, but you don't want to have sunglasses on because it's blocking what you're trying to get there. Another one to wake you up would be movement. I started where I run 7 flights of stairs when I first get up in the morning because it gets me going in my nervous system. And you could do something as simple as a wall sit, air squats, or run the stairs like I was saying I do. You could run around your complex one time. It doesn't have to be far. It could be a 2-minute jog. Who cares? It's just about getting up and moving yourself so that you are activating your sympathetic nervous system to get you going again. And it gets you kind of like out of your head and back into your body to see what you're feeling, and helps you shift from your deep transition of sleep into a more shallow. When you get those little wins in the morning, that's great, because then that starts you off for a win for the day. So whether, again, be 5 minutes or 15 minutes, it kind of gets everything else going for the rest of the day. So I know for myself, I get up and I go run the stairs. I just do it one time, but I get up and I run the stairs for one time. Like I feel like I've accomplished something. And I know there's times that, we all don't want to get out of bed, but it's about, telling yourself before you go to sleep at night, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to feel refreshed, reinvigorated, and re-energized. And I started that about 20 years ago. And I wake up almost every morning and feel that way, unless I'm sick or something. And I wake up and I feel absolutely phenomenal. And that's the reason for that, is because I put it into my consciousness before I go to sleep. So, another one's going to be, if we talk about nutrition, would be vitamin D supplements, or we get vitamin D from the sun. You're not going to get much from the sun this time of year unless you're doing it around noontime. So I would say that you're probably going to have to take some supplements of vitamin D, and you're going to want to get some supplements that have, optimal ranges, like anywhere between 5 and 10,000 international units a day in the winter. Maybe more if you're low, because you need to get tested, and your testing ranges optimal would be 50 to 80. Medical doctors are going to tell you that if you're at 30, you're fine. That's literally the bare minimum. Below that, 29 is considered really, really low. So how 30 is considered even normal, I have no idea. Yeah, that's what they say. And you're going to want to add some K2 with it. You're going to want to add some magnesium with it, not just take it alone. And you want to take vitamin D in the morning. That'd be the best time to take it, because that's the best time to absorb it. And then omega-3s. I love omega-3s because omega-3s are great for the brain. You're going to want to get about 4 grams a day. I wouldn't get less than 3 to 4 grams a day of what we call EPA and DHA. They're just chemical names. Eicosapentaenoic acid and DHA daily, 3 to 4 grams. That would be awesome. They do work synergistically with vitamin D. Vitamin D, omega-3s reduce inflammation, will decrease postpartum depression, will lift our moods. We know that fat and cholesterol are precursors to all the other hormones, and vitamin D is considered a hormone, so that works really well for that. And why that's important is because in the wintertime, the sun's so low, we're just not getting a whole lot. So we need to make sure that we're getting our vitamin D levels, because it'll help us with things like I said, like the low levels of depression. Vitamin D levels have shown really good research on that to help people with that. Sometimes irritability, but it also will decrease your risk of 13 deadly cancers. And people don't know that. There's a high correlation, not cause and effect, but correlation with people with low vitamin D levels, and that's anything under 50 with cancers. And there's 13 known cancers. The only one that we haven't seen the research that it will decrease the risk of cancer, and that would be prostate cancer. Don't really know why, but that's actually not a bad thing, because most men die with prostate cancer. If we've talked about on here, they don't die from it, they die with it. So any questions so far?
Silly question, Dr. P.
Oh, good.
Difference between liquid vitamin versus capsule vitamin, is there?
For what vitamin? Depends what vitamin you're talking about.
Vitamin D.
Well, it has to be cholecalciferol. So there's vitamin D3 and there's vitamin D2. D2 is from plants, but we don't absorb that very well. Vitamin D3 is synthesized from laser light on wool, believe it or not. And it's the best absorbable form. And so when they're measuring your blood, they're measuring 25 dehydroxy. And so to increase that, we've seen that you really need D3. D2 doesn't do as much. You need the D3 to get that level up. As far as whether it's liquid or powder or capsule, that doesn't really matter. You just need to know that it's got what it says in it. There was research here in Phoenix a couple years ago, maybe 10 years ago, where someone went out to Sam's Club, Walmart, Costco, all these different places, and took out their vitamin D supplements and measured it. And the one that had the closest levels only had 10%. All the rest had less than 10%. None of them had more than 10% of what it said on the label. So I tell people, unless it's being third-party tested, you're not going to know what you're getting. So that doesn't really matter whether it's liquid or powder or capsule.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
From
So-
the supplement section here, you talk about some supplements you take in the morning. Are there any that you take at night that absorb through the night, or like?
Well, so you want to take
timing of
things like
supplement.
saffron at night, because saffron, again, I don't believe in melatonin. I wouldn't take melatonin because it has a negative feedback loop. If you give your body melatonin, it will stop producing melatonin. Your pineal gland will, which is not a good thing. And you want melatonin. So you want your body to start to learn to produce it on its own and not go, if you're going to give it to me, I'll stop doing it. So I would do saffron at night. I would do magnesium threonate because it has a predisposition for the brain. Magnesium glycinate is great for muscles, but magnesium threonate is great for the brain. I would do chamomile, like a chamomile tea, or would be a powder or capsule. Those would be the kind of things. I'd do the amino acids, the essential amino acids I talk about through Body Health. I would do those at night because that's going to help keep you from feeling hungry and getting them in the middle of the night and wanting to eat or something like that. And also it's going to give you the building blocks that you need to recover from the day's events. So that's something I would do.
I found when I took the perfect amino at night the other day, I literally woke up at 4 a.m., which, I mean, that's 7 hours of very good sleep, with my body beginning to warm up, and I was like ready to like go to the gym because of all the aminos, that, because one serving is 10 eggs. But would that be
Well,
realistic?
that's possible. No, that's possible. And that is exactly why you wake up, is because your internal body temperature rises. And that was why you would do.
I was burning up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why we wake up, because that's when our internal body temperature starts to rise and we wake up. And then the opposite happens. For us to go to sleep, we need our temperature to drop. And that's why I would do a cold plunge in the morning. It sounds paradoxical, but that's the way it works. I lower my internal body temperature through the glabrous skin, whether it be forehead, palms of my hands, or palms of my feet, lowers my internal body temperature, which makes my body increase my internal body temperature, which then wakes me up. And then I do the opposite at night. I do the hot at night. And it raises my temperature, internal temperature, which then makes my body then go to lower it. And by lowering it, that's when we start to get drowsy and feel sleepy, because we are lowering our temperature.
Thank you.
Yeah. So besides the physiological side, some other things I would talk about is you guys could get on HeartMath.org, and they have all kinds of research there, or you can get on HeartMath.com and you can buy stuff there. But HeartMath has been doing research for a long time to help people to become more heart coherent. And we know that we can see that in hospitals. I know April had talked to her about that, but you can take an animal, a service animal, into the hospital. And if you're measuring the animal and you're measuring the human, the one that's really trained to being a good service animal, their heart rate variability will be like this. And all of a sudden their heart rate coherence and variability will actually become in sync. And that's another one that caregivers give their patients, the really good ones. They become in sync with one another. And so I would look at doing HeartMath. A simple way to do that without even having any of that technology is closing your eyes, taking in a couple physiological sighs, which then drops you down to more parasympathetic mode. And then I would put a smile on my face, and thinking about someone that brings a smile to my face, I would then take breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth. But when I do that, I'm visualizing the oxygen, the air going in and out of my heart. That's just something that HeartMath teaches, and it works really, really well. And then that helps drop you down into more parasympathetic mode. So that would help get me going, whether it be I'm a little bit stressed when I wake up in the morning because I got so much to do. It's a good way to start rather than getting on your phone, or I could do it before I go to bed, or I could do both. I don't have to do that for a couple minutes. Train yourself enough, and you could do it for 30 seconds, or you could create what's called a trigger, where I could snap my fingers, I could put on a baseball hat, I could rub my foot, or whatever it is, right? I taught my daughter to do that, where she would wiggle her nose before she would putt, and that was her trigger to get locked in, get focused, and then putt. And then her putting got way, way better after doing that. Another one was a bill of her cap. She would tap the bill of her cap, and then when she did that, she got into her motion, didn't hear anybody else. People could be heckling, whatever, didn't hear anything, and it's a trigger. So you could do the same thing with this HeartMath or any technique by doing that. Another one you could do before bed would be getting your legs up on the wall to get some drainage out of your legs. Again, doesn't have to be long. If you did a minute would be better than nothing. But if you could do 5 or 10 minutes, that'd be great. Maybe while you're meditating, maybe while you're doing your gratitude, you're just flipping around on your bed doing it that way. That would be great. When I get up in the morning, one of the things you could do, I do this at seminars a lot, is cross lateral patterns where I'll take my right hand to my opposite knee, right? And I'll just go back and forth, and then I'll do the opposite foot or heel, and I do it that way, right? And I'm just trying to integrate the brain so that the right and left hemisphere are coordinated. There's a book out there, I'm trying to think what it's called. I think it's called The Brain Gym, I think. I'm pretty sure it is, where they talk about all these different techniques. And you can do that seated, you can do it standing, you can do it laying down. You can only do certain movements if you're laying down though. So, and the thing is like this, is that I just want people to realize that it's not that you're, weak or broken, or you just need some tools, because we're all smart people. It's not like, oh, I know this stuff and you don't, therefore I'm smarter than you. It's that this is what I do for a living. If I was to come into your place of work, there'd be so many things you would know that I don't know, that I wouldn't want you to tell me like, hey, you don't know this stuff either. I know I don't. So I do the same thing with people, is that I just been doing this for a long time. And there's, things that I keep learning along the way, new things that I keep implementing. So just give yourself permission to rest every now and then, and give yourself permission to, okay, I got upset, I got overwhelmed, and now bring yourself back down. And when you do that, things work a lot better there. Hey, before I go to the next point, you guys got any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Because there's such a demand coming from all different directions in the holidays and stuff. And again, I think I know your answer to this, but I'm going to ask it. What do you think is the number one thing, if we have to kind of narrow it down or triage what we can do for ourselves during this time to kind of help maintain our health and get us through? What would be the number one thing that you would pick that we can do to take care of ourselves first?
Sleep.
Okay.
Because I use that with every person in my clinic. It's going to be sleep, because that's going to set the foundation. You can try to think positive thoughts. It's a lot harder, right? The prefrontal cortex goes offline when we're not getting good sleep.
Okay, I'm going to throw you one then. What's number two? I knew it was going to be sleep. Okay, all right, fair enough. That's hard to do during the holidays. That's tough.
Well, that's the point, right? People eat like crap during the holidays, and so that would be number two. It's not. The mindset would be still, for me, is always number one, because if I have the right mindset, I'm going to get to sleep on time, and I'm also going to eat right because I have the right mindset. So for me, everything starts in the mind, and then from there, everything else will follow. But in what you're asking, sleep would be number one. Number two would be nutrition, and then number three would be exercise.
Right, fair.
Pretty much like everyday life. It's magnified, because you're going to grandma's house, you're going to your mom's house, you're going to your in-laws, whatever, and they're eating cakes and candies and cookies. And, hey, I grew up on that stuff. That stuff looks great. So I make sure I have my own food. And then if I'm going to eat any of that stuff, it's going to be a bite. It's not going to be, an entire meal of death. So that's just me.
All right.
Okay. So also in the holidays, give yourself permission to it might be controversial, some of the things I'm going to say, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. Is you've got to learn to say no. You got to practice no. And you've got to start with small no's. And no is a complete sentence. It doesn't need to be explained. It's just when you say no, it means no. And people are going to ask, oh, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you going to stay up late? And why aren't you going to eat the food that we eat? Just say no, thank you. And move on. And so do what you know is in your best interest, not trying to help other people feel good about their choices, because that's all you're doing. You're making the addict feel good. You're going to pick up the crack pipe with them and make them feel good about the choices they're doing about picking up the crack pipe. And I just tell people, put down the crack pipe, you know what I mean? And make the right choices, because in the end, you're the one that's going to pay those consequences. You're going to either reap the benefits or pay the consequences. And the other one's going to be, before you say yes, like ask yourself, like, is this going to drain me, or is it going to drain from my cup, or is it going to fill my cup? Because, I've always said this, I don't believe in better halves. Like when people say, oh, she's my better half, he's my better half. Because to me, that means I'm taking from that person, half of my cup is filled up by them. And I think that's not the way to go. I need to be 95% full, and then someone else just tops me off. And that's awesome. I can do that. And I think that's a great relationship. But I think if it's always this, the other person's your better half, you're always draining from the other person. Well, You know, the same thing can happen to us when other people are, you know, wanting us to make them feel good. And you can still love them and choose not to help them, and you still love them and say no. And that's where you need to protect your energy, your space of, you know, what's in the best interest for you. Just, you got to protect it. It's just like protecting your money. You wouldn't just walk around, you know, money attached to your body and it'd fall off, right? Or in your hands loose. You put it away. You put it in a wallet for safekeeping. We'll do the same thing with your heart and with your mind and your soul. And just don't let people take it, but also don't give it to them. And too many people do that. You know, another one would be, and I learned this recently, was, you know, I've never thought of it before, but I was talking to Vince and Ricky about this, is that have an exit plan before you arrive. And actually, that's actually brilliant, because I never really thought about that, is that, you know, what time are we going to leave? You know, what's the cues? What are some things we're gonna do? You know, use the proverbial bubble I talk about putting this bubble around yourself where you can still be around people that are negative in your family, but you're just not allowing them into your space. They can spew all the stuff they want to spew, and it just kind of runs off, and it doesn't even stick to you. And when you think of it that way, it's great. You can still be polite and still be present, just not absorb their energy. And when you can get into that space, I'm telling you, man, it works like a freaking charm. And, you know, remember that other people's chaos or other people's crisis in their life isn't your responsibility. It just isn't. It isn't for you to take on. You can if you want. I don't know why, but you can. So I just wouldn't do that. I know life is hard enough on our own. So, you know, you got to make sure you set boundaries. And it's not like being selfish. It's about being selfless, and it's about being self-preserving. So you can't show up as your best self if you're on empty, or if you're giving yourself away to other people. Okay. Any questions before we go to the next section? Okay. Okay. So in the last 30 years of practice, you know, I've been building some real connections with people, and that's what it's all about. I believe that life's about connections or relationships, and it's about experiences. When you put the two together, then you can do something really amazing in life. It's not just about one or the other. It's about if you put both together. So, you know, there's people that talk about this 3-person rule, that instead of trying to like be around and see everybody in life, like you prioritize the 3 people you need to see during your holiday adventure when you go back home, or people are coming here. And then, you know, trying to develop a deep conversation if those people are like that, so that you can get to know them maybe on a deeper level, so that you can skip that superficial chit chat, and then start with, you know, who fills your cup? Like people that you just really love being around, would be your grandma or your aunt or Uncle Bill or your cousin, your nephew, whatever. Hang out with those people. That's what you need to do. You know, the other one would be, you know, don't use your phone. Don't use your phone at the table. Sit down and have communion. Have community with your family and stuff. If you can, if there's a big giant table on that's great. And again, you don't have to eat everything everyone else is eating. You can just nibble, and you can just eat your own food even. But you just need to make sure that you're doing what's in your best interest. But I think community is really, really important. And I just don't think that's something we should compromise on, is community, especially during the holiday times. You know, another one would be service. During that time, we know that there's always these drives for food and for toys and that kind of thing. And if we can do some service for other people, that always lifts my spirit. I know that when I'm giving to other people, because it makes me really, really, really grateful for the life that I have. And I'm always grateful, but it makes me exponentially more grateful when I give back to other people. And I do that on a daily basis. Yet when I do that to people that I see are in dire need, that are homeless and on the streets, like that fills my heart, because I could be that person in a matter of minutes, getting in a bad car accident or getting attacked or something. That could be me, and not knowing who I am or where I'm at. So that would be something I would talk to people about. You guys ready for the next section?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So in some of the strategies we talked about this before, would be the perfect aminos. I take 5 tablets. I would do 3 times a day. And that's going to be equivalent to about 125 to 175 grams of protein a day, which is awesome. The reason you take those is because it's the building blocks for protein. They're amino acids. They're not branched chain amino acids. They're essential amino acids. They can become anything you need, any other amino acids you need, because they're the essential ones. They're the only ones that you need. With that, though, is that it will help you to recover. It will cover any missing links you have in your protein. Because I know for me, there's no way I can eat 200 grams of protein a day, and I eat a lot, but there's no way. So that helps me, and that makes it to where when I do eat, it's for enjoyment and not just trying to pound in all the nutrition. And that's where I said I get mine through Body Health. I would look at doing a anti-inflammatory through the same company. I use something called Relief, and it's got boswellia, turmeric, ginger in there, and it's an anti-inflammatory. Also remember, in anti-inflammatory, we want to stay away from sugars, but also stress, because they're both they're both inflammatory. And so we need to make sure we're proactive that, not just reactive. Maintenance will help if you're taking stuff like that, because it's not an NSAID, a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, so it's not going to act as fast. So you want to do that on like a daily basis. And then we'll go back to that hydration, where we talked about putting a pinch of salt in every 20 ounces of water. You just can't absorb water without sodium. Sodium is what pulls it into the cell. And if you want even another hack on that, is add the amino acid glycine. And again, just wouldn't take a lot, like a pinch or double pinch of glycine with the pinch of salt, because the glycine pulls the sodium that's in the salt, and the salt or the sodium pulls the water into the cell. So that's always a good thing. And I don't believe in Gatorade or Powerade or any of that stuff, because does it have sodium in it? Yeah, like 50 milligrams per serving. So that's not very significant. I'm looking more like 1,000 at a time, 500 to 1,000 at minimum. But it's not that. It's that it has so much sugar and dyes and everything else in it that I just would stay away from. Because remember, sugar is in fact inflammatory. So that one day of sugar maybe won't kill you, but when you're at the holidays, you're there multiple days, and you get one day and then you kind of give up. And I know, because I've been there. You do one day and you're like, I'll forget it. I'll just go the rest of the visit, and then I'll eat clean when I get back. And then you just see that your energy drops, your health starts to drop, you just feel garbage, your mental starts to go, you emotionally feel terrible because you gave in and you ate all that garbage. You've been doing this great all year long, and then you gave up for that 1 year. And then you start talking about doing New Year's resolutions, which are total garbage. Instead of making a legendary standard for the new year, which we're going to talk about in our upcoming webinar in January, legendary New Year's standards instead of resolutions. That we do that, and then we break off from that, not long after we make it. So let's go into mind shift, because if I want to go from a high, wherever I'm at, to a high level performer, I have to change my mindset. It really starts with that, whether it be the way I think about life, the way I think about the holidays. I need to reframe that, because no matter what's happened in the past, if I bring the same, I was just talking to my editor today about that. My publisher, if I bring the same level of thoughts today to what got me where I am today, I'm going to end up with the same results. And so I really need to, so if I'm not in a good place, a good situation, I need to change my thoughts. And if I don't change my thoughts, I'm going to end up in the same exact spot. I don't even know if it'll be circular. I think you maybe just stay in the same spot and you spin around. I don't think you go anywhere and come back. I think you literally just stay there and spin there. So that would be something. I know Vince and I have talked about this a lot, because Vince has a group called Conscious Impact Leaders, CIL, and it's about going from scarcity to abundance. And that is that we all should be abundant, because that's how we were born. I mean, think about it. You had a sperm and an egg come together and could create this human being called you. That's pretty abundant right there. So if that can happen, then why can't then you create something better in your life? I was talking to my publisher today, and I said to her, this is the way I think life is. She goes, well, do you think it's fate, or do you think that it's about free will? And I said, well, I think it's a bit of both. I think God puts bumpers on the alley so that you don't ever hit a gutter, right? You don't ever hit a gutter ball, but it doesn't guarantee you're going to hit a strike. That's what you do. That's where I roll the ball, and I'm going to hit a strike depending upon how I roll the ball and angles and spin and all that. But having God in my life makes sure I don't ever get in the gutter. I might think I'm in the gutter, but I'm not by any means, because God's keeping me from going in the gutter. And that was my analogy I came up with on that. So if you guys want to use that. There's some choice words that we can stop saying or start using different ones, saying like I have to or I should, because I use with people all the time. Like if you keep saying should, you're going to just should all over yourself. And they all laugh and they think it's all funny on that. But don't say the word should. Say I get to, or I want to, or not, or I choose to, not that I have to, or Oh gosh, I gotta go do. I got to. You're right. Just changing those words will change a lot right there. You know, I've always used this window shopping analogy a lot, and that is that bad moments are, you know, or bad energy or any being in a bad place is like window shopping, or you want to make it like window shopping. You're just there for a short period of time and you move on. You don't go in and ask if you can look at the clothes, or you don't go in and look at the clothes. You don't go in and ask for a job, and you sure as heck don't want to go in and say, "Can I live here?" And that's what too many people do is instead of window shopping, they're actually going in and asking for a job, and then they're wondering why they're miserable. So, you know, another one would be like we've talked about with health before is like, don't let labels define you. You know, people want to define you with a label, and that just is not helpful. So, you know, you're not your diagnosis or your struggles. Have that warrior mentality inside and see that you're worthy of peace and joy during the holidays. And when people try to, you know, shake your tree, don't let any apples fall from the tree, and see how that works for you. And then, you know, if we go into those routines again, wake up consistently at the same time, get some sunlight, get some movement, have gratitude, maybe cold exposure. I mean, if I did all that, that's maybe 15 minutes at most, maybe even 10, right? And then what about a midday check? Make sure I'm doing some physiological size. I'm like doing a body scan. Where's my tension? How do I feel? Am I drinking enough water? Water with salt? Water with sodium? Great. Okay. Yeah. You know what? I'm not drinking enough. Maybe that's why I'm a little dehydrated. Maybe I'm not really hungry. Maybe I'm just really thirsty. A lot of times that's what it is. Maybe I need to do nutrition reset. And then in the evening, I walk after my meal, just a light, you know, jog for 15 to 20 minutes, helps me to digest my food. I'm going to do that. If I have a hard time going to sleep because I have ruminating thoughts or just can't shut off my mind, I take a hot shower for 5 minutes. I finish off with 30 seconds of cold. I dry myself off. I go to sleep. Maybe I get my legs up on the wall. I think about gratitude. Make sure I put my phone in airplane mode so that there's no messages, not the messages, but the actual Wi-Fi is not coming in on my phone. So that way I could be next to me. And so I could have my alarm go off at, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, whatever. But that way I don't have the Wi-Fi all night long bombarding my brain. And then do lights out at the same time every night, because that works really, really well. And, you know, you talked about it, April, and you said, like, what would be the number one thing? I'd say sleep, because that'd be my non-negotiable, would be sleep. First would be sleep. Next would be water, because I think water is super important. These are non-negotiables. Next one would be protein, get enough protein, movement, and then don't forget about connection. I would definitely make sure I'm consistently connecting with people, because it's that quality over quantity. You know, and consistency, like in all these areas, are going to beat intensity. Like I can take 25 amino acids. Okay, don't need 25 at one time, but I'd be better off doing 5 3 times a day, and then the next day 5 2 times a day, and then 5 2 times a day, and 5 3 times a day. And doing it that way, then going, oh gosh, I forgot for 2 or 3 days. I'm going to take a whole bunch today. So it's more about the consistency, not about the intensity or the volume of stuff that I'm taking in. The other one would be, if it was me, I would set up a time that when I come back, I talk to myself about this all the time, vacations, is that you want to make sure that when you come back, that you don't need a vacation from your vacation. Too many people do need that, is they need to come back and have a vacation from the vacation because it was so stressful, whether it be with family or whether it be at the holidays or be during the regular year. So sometimes maybe you need to think about taking a day off when you first get back, so you can just kind of get back into your routine and get back to being balanced and easy again. The nice thing is that when you live in someone else's place, realize that, hey, I'm only going to be there for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or whatever it is, but I don't actually live here, and have gratitude for that you don't live there, that you don't eat like they eat and live like they live and all that kind of thing. So even though maybe it's not the best environment, you can look at it in a positive and say, well, at least I'm not going to end up with the things they're going to end up with because of the way they eat and they talk and the negativity and blah, blah, blah. And then just don't take any of that on, and think more about, you know, this whole thing is about life growth, not perfection in life. And if you look at it that way, then you can go through life a lot easier. So think about too, you know, we have this legendary life community that Vince and I and Ricky have put together. And so you go to school.com/legendarylife, and that's where you can get on every Friday call, and it's free. And then if you want more from that, it's about having community. And we're going to do a little bit of meditation. We might do a little bit of sharing about, well, we are going to share about what are your standards might be for that hour, for that day, for that week, that month, that year. And then what are your obstacles? What are some things that you're having that, you know, are going to maybe keep you from getting where you want to go? So that would be something that would be great. Again, school.com/legendary life. And like I said, there's a call every week that's free. And then there's another one if you want to pay to get access to me and more of my knowledge and more of the content, then you can pay a small fee for that. And it's well worth it because it's 30 years worth of information that I have. And you get access to me where you can ask me questions. You can put them in the chat, or you can ask me personally on the call. And then, you know, the thing about the legendary life is you got accountability partners. And that's what's really beautiful, is because we need community, we need accountability in life. And that's one of the things it does. It's about education. It's really, really good. It's where, you know, I truly believe that people shouldn't live in isolation. And so if you shouldn't live in isolation, you can't heal in isolation. Do everybody need their own downtime? Yeah, absolutely. But we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be in community with other people, at the very least with one other person. And then, you know, hopefully you have more people in your life than just that one person. But, you know, a lot of people aren't understood. And so we're going to give them a platform to feel understood, and people feel like they need to be lifted up. I know that April and I talked about this. There was a speaker that came and she said, okay, so how many of you people have done this? And everybody stood first. Sorry. So everybody stood. If you haven't done this, then you sit down. And so she named a bunch of things out of her book, these like 7 things or whatever. Well, people were still standing after 7. So then she started making crap up. And the last one was like, well, how many of you got up at 4:30 this morning? Well, nobody stood up. She goes, see, I'm the only one standing. And you're like, oh, well, good for you. Good for you. That's awesome. That was so uplifting. I feel so more energized now that you're so much better than I am. And that's not what my community is about. My community is about, just like the book's going to be about, it's about living a legendary life, that we all have that ability. And to say that, well, I've lived this legendary life, or I'm living a legendary life, and it's not possible for you, because no, that's crap. Everybody can live that. I truly, truly believe in my heart of hearts that every single person could create a legendary life if they choose to. Again, it's a choice though. If they want to be miserable, they want to be lack and despair, and they want to live inside that misery, they can. But if they want to window shop like we do in our community, then they could join our community. Also know that we have a YouTube channel where we're putting all these past events on. The monthly webinars are every Thursday of each month. You can get on there. If you want to go fast, man, you know, go alone. But if you want to go really far and go deep, you got to go together. And that's a great quote. You know, you can go faster on your own, but if you want to go really far and go deep, you need to go with other people. Because so for instance, could I have done this whole thing on my own? Absolutely. Absolutely. But would I be where I'm at if it wasn't for Vince and Ricky? No, not even close. And now that we have Haley on board and April and all my board members, no. I mean, could I have done it on my own? Yeah, absolutely. But would I have wanted to? No. Because when I climbed to the top of the mountain and I'm like, yeah, and there's nobody there, who cares? Like, you know, I want to be able to share it with other people. And that's what this life is all about. It's again, it's about community. It's about relationships and experiences. And so when people can create that, they're going to go a lot deeper and a lot farther. So with all of that, I know that we're kind of winding down here. I just want to say a couple things, and that is, develop a morning routine. Figure out what your sleep protocol is going to be. Start working on those physiological size. You know, set boundaries, because we're coming up to Thanksgiving. We're coming up to Christmas here. And so I would say set boundaries, set just one boundary, or set a boundary with one person that this is what's going to transpire and this is the way it's going to go. And then see if you can't make one quality connection. And, you know, for someone that's maybe going to have, you know, a meal here and it's going to be them and just their spouse or whatever, okay, that's fine. Then maybe you do it for this week. Set a boundary with another person this week. Go out and create one quality connection this week. You know, maybe your steps are you join school.com, SKOOL.com/legendary life. You share this message with someone else. You schedule a meeting to meet up with somebody in your life. You schedule your routines. You put it on your calendar and you go, hey, It's non-negotiable. I'm getting up at this time. I'm going to bed at this time. At this time, I'm going to go out and see the sunrise. At this time, I'm going to do that. At this time, I'm going to eat this healthy food, like whatever it is. But you start setting a schedule for yourself. And then the last one would be, if people are struggling, you got to reach out to other people, because you don't want to go through this alone, because that's not the way life is meant to be. It's meant to be with each other. And lastly, don't think that you need to survive during the holidays, because I don't believe in surviving. I believe in thriving. And so that's a mindset. If you believe that you're gonna just survive the holidays, that's probably what you'll do. But if you want to absolutely thrive in the holidays, you can. If you think your workout's gonna suck, it's probably going to. If you think like, man, I'm gonna kick butt today, you're probably going to. And if you don't, you just go, okay, well, why didn't I today? Like, what was it that kept me from getting where I wanted to get to? And then that's just more information. You learn something that day. And so, choose you, choose peace, choose calm, choose simple routines over complicated stuff, choose stuff that works for you, choose, because life's about choices. And so figure out what works for you, and figure out how you can start living a legendary life today. Not wait until the future, but today.
Thank you, Dr. P.
Awesome.
We got a full moon meditation tonight or tomorrow night, depending on where you're at,
Okay.
out on the beach. And now you got me going to bed early enough to get up for the beach sunrise here in
Awesome.
Florida. So my routine's starting, and I've already borrowed heavily your terminology that we got New Year's standards. We know the standard. We're just renewing it to ourselves, and we're reacquainting ourselves with what our new standard is. I also listened to an alcohol-free lifestyle podcast, and they talked about how everyone has addictions. Just make your addiction healthier than a bad addiction.
Yeah, true.
So maybe
true.
go work out instead of the drinking part. And like when you are going to a holiday party, ask yourself, do I want to have a few drinks and have fun with my friends, or do I want a good night's sleep? Because you're gonna get either or, but you don't get both.
You're getting both. And you know what? And how about have fun with my friends? Remember talking to my friends and getting a good night's sleep. You know what I mean? And
remember
and
what I
seeing that
said.
my whoop says I had bad sleep for 4 nights in a row. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
there's so much
I appreciate you, because regardless of how much you say your team helps you, you've helped me remarkably. You've helped my son remarkably. He'll be in the NFL because of you. So I give you full gratitude. You'll be one of my 3 gratitudes this evening. And I actually might start elevating my feet now, because I've heard that enough. I better start doing it. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Next,
Thanks, guys.
the January call will be coming up first week of January. We'll let the New Year's subside and come back to work. But I'm pretty sure you've already said we're going to talk about that New Year's standard.
Correct.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So
Thanks, guys.
let's all live legendary.